It's sad to think that if you go based on memberships and scoring, you would believe that The Tale of Outcasts is probably the worst show of the winter 2023 anime season. But I can honestly say, after watching the first 4 episodes, I'm absolutely hooked, and I'm really pleasantly surprised that this show is as good as it is. But yes, I just got done with the first 4 episodes of The Tale of Outcasts, a series that is airing in the winter 2023 anime season. I'm here to give my first impressions on the series and tell you why you probably shouldn't overlook this show. So let's jump right into it. When we open up The Tale of Outcasts, we follow a girl named Wisteria, and she's unfortunately an orphan who is pretty much panhandling on the side of the road, really kind of trying to guilt people into giving her money. Her clothes are ragged, and nearby her is the head of the orphanage that she's from, constantly berating her for not doing well enough to get money for pretty much having to feed her. And as they return back to the orphanage, he is extremely abusive of her, yes, claiming that she's useless, she's not doing enough for all the food that they're giving her, even though, yes, as we see, the bread's just moldy. It's not like they're giving her proper food. But there's one thing that's keeping her going. As we find out, as she returns back to her home and knocks on the window and calls out to this Marbas, a demon comes to the window and sits down and talks to her. In this brief flashback that we get, we see this one day that she's out on the side of the road, and this Marbas guy walks by her. And he's pitying her because she's dirty and she's standing by the side of the road asking for money. But she notices him, which this shocks him, and shocks her too, because this guy literally looks like a cat beast thing. And so she quickly looks away, and he's like, wait, you noticed me? Yes, we find out that Marbas, when he's in his demonic form, nobody can notice him, and he's been walking around this world for hundreds of years. And so yes, every night when she calls out to him, he visits her and tells her the stories of the adventures and the travels that he's done. And this becomes kind of the one thing that keeps Wisteria going. Despite the fact that she's abused and she's forced to have to panhandle and all this kind of stuff, Marbas comes every night and talks to her. And they have this great little conversation between the two of them. And from Marbas' perspective, you sort of feel that he is isolated, that people don't know who he is, they can't see him unless he's in his human form, which he can't hold for very long, and yes, he gets way too much attention because he looks extremely handsome. But you almost get a sense that despite he feels he's superior to humans, he enjoys his conversations with Wisteria. And again, Wisteria loves the stories he tells because she can't go anywhere. She's stuck there, and this is her life. Well, this time together is short-lived as, yes, this lead of this orphanage comes to Wisteria and tells her, good news, we found somebody to take you in, somebody that will buy you. Yes, this entire time he's been sitting around the side of the road, he's been advertising her. Her silver hair and her youth is attractive to, yes, certain crazy individuals that will pay a lot of money for her. So yes, he's not an orphanage looking for people to take her in and adopt her. They're looking for somebody to buy her. And yes, so happens this guy that bought Wisteria is not a good person. Well, her last night there is horrible. She realized at this point that a long time ago when they said that my brother was adopted, he was probably sold too. And she will be sold to some terrible person and her life's over. And she pleads out to Marbas to please save her. Take her away from here and let's go out and travel together. But Marbas can't do it. Again, he's a demon. And if a demon helps a human, it will destroy them. The moment they do some kind act to a human without some sort of payment, they will crumble. So Wisteria is like, well, take my soul. That's all I have to give you, just take my soul. They do that, right? But Marbas can't do that because he's already immortal. A demon will take a pact for a human soul because they want to use that soul when they pass away to extend their life. But Marbas is already immortal, so it can't be a transaction that he can accept. So he leaves her to her sorrow. The next day, they get her all dressed up and send her off to this guy that bought her, which, yes, we find out that he buys little girls and children to torment them, to torture them. He gets a kick out of it. And as Wisteria is fleeing around the house, eventually the doors fly open, and yes, it's Marbas, and he's in his human form, and he throws money before the guy to buy Wisteria from him. But yes, this guy is like, no, I don't want that. I want this girl. She's perfect. And that leads Marbas to attack this guy to protect Wisteria. But again, because he did a kind act for her, he begins to crumble immediately. And not only that, but this guy that bought Wisteria is being driven and has a pact with a demon himself. And so as Marbas is crumbling, plus he's having to defend against this other demon, finally Wisteria speaks up. All I have to do is make a pact with you. Then take my eyes. My eyes that give me the ability to see demons, take them from me. And the pact begins. Marbas is restored, and he destroys this guy. We come to find out, yes, Marbas is one of 13 calamities, like these great demons. And what kind of follows this is you get a realization that Marbas does like his time with Wisteria. He wanted to help her, but he couldn't. But now that he has this pact with Wisteria, they're able to stand side by side and he's able to protect her. The sad thing that comes of it is obviously now they can travel and journey together because Marbas now has his pact with Wisteria, but additionally, Wisteria giving up her eyes can no longer see the things that they will experience. So instead, Marbas will have to tell her everything they experience together. Marbas becomes Wisteria's eyes, but yet he likes this because for once he's actually excited to journey with somebody. He finally has a partner, somebody to experience those things with him and for him to be able to tell those stories too and see her reactions. So it kind of becomes a codependency thing. Marbas becomes her eyes and she becomes his companion. And through their journeys, they run into a lot of people, including, yes, Wisteria's brother, who happens to work for this group that essentially goes out and slays demons, which, yeah, creates its own problems because he goes to kill Marbas to protect Wisteria, but Wisteria's like, no, I like Marbas. They run into Diana, who is a part of this family that their whole purpose is a long time ago they made a pact with a demon in order to see demons, and they've been working for the royal family to protect them from demonic assassins, essentially. And over time, you see that kind of growing bond between Wisteria and Marbas as, yes, even though he doesn't want to admit it, Marbas does appreciate every moment that he has with Wisteria. Despite the fact that humans have shorter lifespans, he kind of figures this is a nice little moment in his long life that he can kind of enjoy for once. Even if it comes with a lot of difficulties in the idea that, yes, he has to take care of her because she can't see anything. So my thoughts on the Tale of Outcasts. This series, like I said earlier, was an absolute surprise to me, and I'm enjoying it so much more than I thought I would. In the previews, I didn't like the look of Marbas. The cat face thing just looks so awkward. And they have other ones that show up, like Naberius, which is like a dog version of it, but it just looked weird. And at the same time, it's one of those things where that's kind of the aesthetic of it. It almost going for like a Beauty and the Beast kind of a layout. Honestly, there was a lot of people that were kind of equating it to something like Ancient Magus' Bride and stuff, which honestly, all those things aren't really good fits for this show. This isn't a Beauty and the Beast where she goes there and he takes care of her in a mansion. This isn't an Ancient Magus Bride where Marbas is teaching Wisteria how to do magic. It's really its own thing in the idea that, yes, it is a beast and a young girl, but it's going for more of an aspect of their journey together and the experiences they have together. And it almost feels as if it could possibly fall into one of those categories of like a pact per episode. Like, here's an episode, we meet somebody that has a pact with a demon, and here's their story, and then they move on. But there's constantly kind of a through line story that's going through it. I mean, everything with Diana was something that was kind of progressing over time, so I don't think it's going to turn into an episodic story. But even still, those little individual stories are really fantastic. I like Diana and her struggles with her family, basically failing the royal family and being discarded. Harriet and her pact that she made with Molly, and the whole story behind essentially the lake demon was really heartbreaking. But again, it almost serves the main story in that Wisteria and Marbas almost gain a different perspective on their relationship as they meet different people, especially with Harriet. That was a huge turning point, it seemed like, for Marbas and how he felt about the time he's going to spend with Wisteria. Essentially, the experiences they have meaning. But I think at its core, the thing that I'm loving so much about the show so far is it's just got so much heart and chemistry between Wisteria and Marbas alone. I love their encounters. I love their interactions and everything. Like, even the earlier scenes where he would come and visit her at the orphanage and she'd make these comments about the fact that he doesn't have any friends because he doesn't know how to really portray stuff. Like, he's sitting there with this girl that's stuck at this orphanage that can't go out and experience the world, and he's telling her all these stories, and when she asks him to describe this Shakespeare play, he's like, yeah, I was there for when Shakespeare was here. She has him explain it, and he's like, yeah, it wasn't as great as people make it out to be, and she's like, you don't understand how great that is. Like, you got to experience that. You don't understand how other people feel. Like, the way you're describing that isn't sympathetic to her situation, so her response is to say, you don't really know how to act around people. You must not have many friends. They just have these really fun and casual conversations between the two of them as it goes along, and I think the chemistry and the writing between them is really fantastic. Now, there's a lot of misses in the writing. I won't say this show is like perfection. This isn't an amazing 10 out of 10 show or anything. I think it's much more better than what it feels like a lot of people surrounding the fandom is really giving it. Like I said, scores on certain sites is like, why do you think this is this bad? This isn't hentai levels of quality here. I do feel that there is some lack of depth, I guess is the best way to put it. This show doesn't really have like this significant amount of depth. We're not building this incredible world or anything. It's very simply Wisteria traveling with his demon. Obviously, there's this group that wants to take out all the demons because they're evil and they're dangerous. Marbas is a super overpowered version of a demon. You have the 13 generals, essentially. And there's a lot of convenience to it in the idea of like, yes, this guy that is Wisteria's brother happens to be with the organization that's hunting down the demons. There's a lot of convenience and there's a lot of shallowness to the writing. But it doesn't take away from the fact that I think so far as it's played out, the pacing overall is doing really well. And again, the chemistry is really solid. Yes, a lot of that stemming around the relationship between Wisteria and Marbas, which is enough for me. If they're the focus of the story and there's plenty good chemistry between these two main characters, that works for me. And as long as they keep this formula of every encounter they have has some sort of effect on them and their relationship, I think it's going to do very well in the long run. Kind of like the title leads you to believe, this is a tale of people that have been the outcasts. There's a lot of emphasis here on the idea that anybody that makes a pact with a demon is essentially an outcast. If these demon hunters find you, they'll sense how much demonic force is around you, and they'll kill you. So Wisteria making her pact with Marbas, it's essentially a death sentence for her. She is for sure an outcast at this point. And I think each one of these stories they're telling is essentially about that. Harriet was kind of an example of this with a kind of a twist at the end of it, this idea that she made a pact with this demon. She wasn't seen by society as a viable person, but at the same time, again, an outcast. Diana as well, her family made a pact with the demons, and so eventually in the end, even though she was being used by the royal family, eventually she was an outcast. So it's got that theme in there. There's also a lot of talk of this being a full adaptation, and if that's the case, that's fantastic. I also like that every comedic beat they have in the series so far is really nailing it. Like the expressions on the characters' faces, like Wisteria saying that he has no friends, or the interactions between Marbas and Neberis, this dog demon guy. They have this one scene where Diana is explaining to Wisteria pretty much the history of her family and how they, again, protect the royal family. And Wisteria is getting over a cold, and so her nose is running the entire time. And at some point, Wisteria goes to speak up that her brother's a part of this one group that kill the demons. And Marbas goes to cover Wisteria's face to quiet her. And of course, her snot gets all over his hand. So Naberius comes over and laughs at him, and he just kind of wipes his hand on Naberius. And they're just kind of bickering. And so Diana just yells out, "Will you guys be quiet? I'm trying to explain the story." Again, the chemistry is so far really solid. I love the interactions of the characters. Wisteria is fantastic. Marbas so far has been a really great character, just kind of that big teddy bear that's slowly kind of opening himself up. Visually, it's really solid. I mean, there's nothing really here for me to complain about. The characters stay on model, and I think for a show like this, that's kind of the important aspect of it. Yeah, with all that said, I highly recommend if you have some time to check out The Tale of Outcasts. Don't overlook it. Give it a couple of episodes. Again, like I said before, it feels like this show is going to be the one this season that just everybody overlooks. Just assume that it's going to be a bad show. But I really, really enjoyed it. It's kind of... I haven't looked at my list yet, but it's getting up there in one of the shows of this season that I'm really enjoying. So definitely suggest checking it out. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, make sure to hit that like button down below. Comment. Let me know what you thought of the series if you're going to be checking it out. Was it even on your radar? Additionally, if you're new to the channel, make sure that subscribe button so you get all my content. I do news, reviews, first impressions, top list. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, if you want to support the channel more, we have a Patreon link, tips link, super thanks button down below. We also have a membership button. Greatly appreciate everybody it does, and y'all take care.